From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, good morning, security gang. I'm obviously not in the studio this morning, on the road. So we've got a packed show for all y'all, but happy Monday, September 23rd, 2024. Thank you so much for tuning into this morning's show. It's packed with news, and another update breaks security tools. So that's really one of the big issues and big stories we're going to talk about today, as well as Disney ditching Slack, 44 million stolen from Bing X over in Singapore, and so much more from China, Ukraine, and my most favorite low point of humanity, the United Nations. So all in all, packed show. Stay tuned. Let's go ahead, get this show going. We'll start off with the latest macOS update last week, going into macOS 15, or the latest Sequoia release, brought a whole flurry of activities. Now, many of you know I'm a Mac user. Many of you know I love Mac. I prefer Mac over Windows. In fact, it's not even close for me. So I will say I updated to Sequoia. I will say this, though. I never am quick to do updates. Even before the big CrowdStrike update, I was never big on doing updates right away until I've kind of let 48 to 72 hours go through, and I kind of saw some of the chatter, but then my security tools and my device were pretty much resolved within 24 hours, so I didn't have that issue. So according to multiple media reports out there, as well as user reports, CrowdStrike, ESET, Microsoft, and SentinelOne all experienced some sort of compatibility issues with the new Sequoia update. They cited network stack changes, CrowdStrike advising customers to avoid the update altogether. Apple was informed of the compatibility issues, but they're not going to, Apple's not going to do a fix. Apple's kind of looking at CrowdStrike going like, this is how we operate our OS. You want to play ball, this is how you play ball. And obviously, you know, CrowdStrike, you know, for whether they're at fault or not, their reputation, you know, people are trying to bully them around a little bit. ESET is also warning customers of network connection issues following the Sequoia update. They're pointing out that it only supports ESET endpoint security version 8.1.6.0 and later, and ESET cybersecurity version 7.5.74.0 and later. SentinelOne said they had some compatibility issues, but resolved those by the next day. So all in all, Microsoft said, if you have network protection enabled, you might see crashes of network extensions. This will result in intermittent connectivity issues for end users. They're recommending customers who have network protection enabled in their organization refrain from upgrading to Sequoia builds at this time. They've also observed, Mac Sequoia has also been observed breaking VPN and RDP connections, and for some users, web browsers stopped working properly. Again, I haven't experienced any of these issues. I've seen it. I actually spoke to someone who did have a whole bunch of these issues, and they said it's primarily it's the coordination between updating an OS and an operating system on a device to these critical vendors that still needs to mesh. And you're seeing Microsoft, they kind of hired an all-star team of former CISOs, and they're bringing them together to kind of mesh the whole thing and bring it together. And Apple's probably going to need to do the same at some point. They're going to have to. I don't see this being something they can just absolutely ignore. So there's that. If you're an Ivanti customer, we talked about this cloud services appliance vulnerability that's being exploited in the wild. That's CVE 2024-8963. It's a passive traversal in Ivanti CSA that allows a remote unauthenticated attacker to access restricted functionalities. Attackers have chained this with CVE 2024-8190, which is an OS command injection flaw that could allow unauthorized access to devices. So that essentially is pretty much a 0 day, right? So they're chaining together two different CVEs. Both of them are low complexity attacks, meaning you have to be an unauthorized attacker. Specifically, you don't need to have username credentials or anything like that. This is pretty arbitrary to take advantage of. So Ivanti has faced a flaw after flaw after flaw after flaw after flaw after flaw. We're in September, and let me take you back to February when essentially everyone said rip and replace, like get rid of Ivanti in your environment. to where we are today. So here's some truth, y'all. Ivanti needs to rethink. The board of directors and the executive leadership need to rethink. You need to rethink the way you're doing your DevSecOps. You need to be transparent about it. You need to rethink the way you're actually pushing out these updates, and what is it in the behavior at Ivanti that have led to all these different things and all these different vulnerabilities. And you need to become honest, and you need to be very, very crystal clear about it. It's just my 2 cents there. Versa Networks, for their end, announced patches for a vulnerability in their virtualization and service creation platform, Versa Director. They're warning that a proof of concept code for it does exist. The CVE's 2024-45229er. It's got a CVSS score of 6.6, meaning it's really not that big of a deal. The vulnerability is related to the REST API in the Versa Director that's used for orchestration and management. It could lead to the exposure of authentication tokens. That's where the vulnerability really lies. Those authentication tokens eventually could become ways to actually get data. Some of those APIs, including used for login screens, banner displays, and device registration, do not require authentication by default. An attacker able to obtain other users' token could use them to invoke additional APIs on port 90183, the network management company explains. Versa notes that the vulnerability cannot be used to expose usernames and passwords, and that if Versa Director is deployed behind the firewall or API gateway, they can block the access to that. So if you're just managing your APIs correctly, then you don't have this issue. If you're not, you kind of got your API sitting out there like ducks in a pond with a bunch of hunters around. You're likely going to take a few shots, and they might hit, and you might be someone's dinner. So just keep that in mind there as well. You want to make sure you get that addressed. And again, API security, really, really critical. You got to protect your APIs. Most businesses run off of APIs. The API security stack is really, really mature at this point. There's no reason not to do this. More than $44 million in cryptocurrency were stolen from Singapore's platform BingX. BingX said on Friday that $44 million was stolen from the platform itself. They're seeing millions flow out of the platform on Thursday night before the company posted a message about a shutdown related to wallet maintenance. The company quickly released a longer statement saying the disruption was triggered after the company detected abnormal network access, potentially indicating a cybercriminal attack on BingX's hot wallet. They immediately implemented emergency measures, and obviously this is kind of like the traditional speak that we always see. The company later released a more complete audit with the help from blockchain security firm SlowMist, which said so far they have tracked around 44.7 million in losses. Other companies said losses could be as high as 48 million, and they're still calculating as of this morning how much more was taken. BingX Chief Product Officer Vivian Lin posted a statement online and released an audio comment through social media platform X. In addition, the platform is working with chain analysis to track the movement of the stolen funds. While the loss is under calculation, they confirmed the following: BingX will fully compensate for the loss with our own capital. The total loss is minimal and manageable, she said. She claimed that they had been able to freeze 10 million as part of the recovery efforts, but the company did not respond to requests for comments about what exactly that means. Likely is that they've frozen one part of it, but not all of it, and now they're going to try and work to recover, because that's how this really works. This is, you think of like bail bondsmen, right? Think of like bail jumpers and hunting and whatnot. This is very, very similar, by the way. Very, very similar in the world of cryptocurrency. If you haven't seen that, that's actually really cool. These companies go out, they're tracking from one chain to the other, kind of going, remember Dog the Bounty Hunter? Kind of like that, right? These guys actually go after these different wallets, but in the digital realm, right? Like someone should do a show about it, because I think it would really help people understand kind of how blockchain really operates, and the negatives and the positives about blockchain, because both of those exist simultaneously in the firm. Disney is apparently ditching Slack after a July data breach exposed over 1 terabytes of confidential messages and files posted to the company's internal communication channels. According to CNBC, the company has begun migrating to a new streamlined enterprise-wide collaboration tools and emailed employees that the migration by the end of the next fiscal quarter will be done. The move comes after the company suffered a massive data breach back in July when a threat actor named Noel Bolge breached Disney's Slack platform, stole 1.1 terabytes worth of data. They stole all messages and files from almost 10,000 Slack channels containing upcoming project details, financial information, IT information, and other confidential information. Disney suffered another data breach a month earlier when 2.5 gigabytes of Club Penguin and corporate data was leaked from the company's Confluent server. All in all, Disney just not having a good time. Just not at all. Like, at all. All right. If you haven't subscribed to my Substack, please make sure to do so now. jamesazar.substack.com. All of my exclusive writing is there. Everything. And over the weekend on Saturday mornings, I'm now dropping a new Saturday morning read, kind of summarizing some stuff that's going on. And you can only get that on my Substack. So please make sure to go subscribe to jamesazar.substack.com. Remember a few years ago, we talked about this, but the German federal cybersecurity chief was kind of ousted in a scandal. Apparently, he was a Russian asset, and a whole bunch of different TV shows have came out, and they really kind of made us all believe this dude was in with the Russians. Well, now a Munich regional court has made a preliminary assessment that the satirical program ZDF Magazine Royale, which made the allegations against Arnie Schoenbaum, was actually in the wrong, and that ultimately this show's satire, apparently satire comedy, led to a whole bunch of internal strife within the German government that eventually led to his dismissal. Arnie, not being a sucker, actually sued them. And he sued both BSI, his former employer, and the company, seeking an injunction about making false statements in the tune of 100,000 euros in compensation for reputational damage. And according to the Munich court, the show's reportage was false in the manner it presented Schoenbaum's links to Russia, and that it falsely suggested that Schoenbaum's position at BSI posed a risk to German cybersecurity. Schoenbaum, for his end, was replaced, and we talked about this back in the show in 2022. He was replaced by then Director General of Information Systems at the European Central Bank, who was his boss. She was a trained mathematician, Claudia Plattner. And even at the time of his suspensions, questions were being raised about the Interior Ministry's head, Nancy Fraser's decision to remove him from office. A detailed report contradicted several of the fundamental allegations included in the show, while a later report in Bild revealed that an internal memo, actually they were trying to sack the dude and use that as grounds to do it. So all in all, good to know that we're playing politics instead of securing our nations. But what could we expect from these bureaucrats, if not just that? A China-linked cyber espionage group is attacking the Taiwanese government agencies, the Philippine and the Japanese military, as well as energy companies in the Vietnam. They're installing Cobalt Strike Client, or a custom backdoor known as Eagle Door, on some of these compromised machines. Earth Baxia, which is the name given by Trend Micro, uses spear phishing to compromise victims. They're also exploiting a vulnerability in the open source Geo server software that has a CVE of 2024-36401. Geo server software is used to distribute geospatial data. The group uses public cloud services for hosting malicious files. It appears not to be connected to other known APTs within China, although there is some overlap with Wicked Panda and APT 41. The majority of the group's infrastructure is based in China, and its attacks target nations of Chinese national interest. Obviously, the attacks come as China appears to be ramping up its attacks on governments and companies in the APAC region. Operation Crimson Palace, a collection of 3 Chinese APT groups working in concert, has successfully compromised more than a dozen targets in Southeast Asia. And mind you, they're just getting ready here, folks. There's that. Ukraine, for their end, are banning Telegram from all government official and military personnel and other defense and critical infrastructure workers' state-issued devices, describing the move as necessary due to a national security risk. They're just playing ball with the French here. That's all it is. There's zero risk. Most Ukrainian reporters use Telegram. Almost everyone uses Telegram in Russia and Ukraine. In any Russian-speaking language, Telegram is the equivalent of WhatsApp. Zero risk there. In fact, the ban shows zero. They've said zero things in this ban that makes you think that Telegram belongs to the Russian intelligence or or is compromised by the Russian intelligence. You can go a whole slot. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. They're just lip syncing because the French give them weapons to fight the war. And the French said, we need you to do this. So it strengthened public opinion in our case against Telegram. Do it now. And Zelensky, being a puppet on strings, did just that. So we'll see. Zelensky himself obviously has been using Telegram for public communication since he is in his official capacity. So there's that. Don't buy into this at all. I've seen people buy into it. Don't. Finally, a high-powered UN advisory body on Thursday said that the global governance of artificial intelligence is imperative and that the UN, the most ridiculous organization on the planet, should regulate the fast. Listen, I want the UN touching nothing. In fact, I want the UN disbanded. They're a disgrace. They've lost their initial message. They're absolutely disgraceful as an organization. The last thing I want the UN to do is set some sort of global infrastructure for regulating AI. No one should sign up for that. These are the most worthless people on planet Earth. They're bought by money and they're driven by greed and money and power. And giving them any sort of control over AI will transform our world, not in the way you think, in the way they think. And so the UN is an absolute joke. The UN shouldn't anywhere be near technology, and the US should do everything in its power in order to ensure that the UN is just pushed to the side because they're an absolute disgrace. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back again tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Thank you all for tuning in. Really, really appreciate y'all being here this morning. Make sure to subscribe, follow us on your favorite social media platforms, and please make sure to check out our Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Have a great week, and most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.